Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Dru Sjodin. Dru Sjodin was born on September 26, 1981, in Minneapolis, Minnesota, to parents Alan and Linda. Although her parents divorced when Dru was 3, they remained friends. At age 10, Dru and her older brother Sven began living with their mother and her mother's new husband, Sid Walker, in a cozy home near Minnesota's picturesque Whitefish Lake. In high school, Dru excelled in school, earning honors, playing golf, and being named prom queen in 1999. Her true passion, however, was art. Her room at home was filled with sketches of rock stars, models, and friends. Dru graduated from high school and attended the University of North Dakota in Grand Forks, a city of about 50,000. Her friends knew her as a vibrant and compassionate person who loved helping others. Dru loved to travel and had long wanted to visit Australia, planning to make the trip in the spring of 2004. To save up for the trip, she worked 2 part-time jobs, one as a sales associate at Victoria's Secret and one as a waitress at a Grand Forks nightclub. On the evening of November 22, 2003, Dru finished her shift at the Victoria's Secret store in Columbia Mall at 4 p.m. Before heading to her second job at the nightclub, she decided to go shopping and purchase a purse from a store in the mall. While walking to her car in the parking lot, Dru called her boyfriend, Chris Lang. However, their conversation was cut short after Dru said, "Okay." Since they were not discussing anything important, Chris didn't think much of it and didn't call her back. About 3 hours later, Chris's phone rang. It was Dru, but instead of hearing her voice, Chris heard the sound of wind and the click of buttons on the phone. Dru lived in a college dorm with her friend Meg Murphy. At the same time Chris received the mysterious phone call, Meg received a call from the nightclub where Dru worked. The staff were trying to figure out why Dru had not shown up for her shift and had not answered her phone. As a responsible and punctual employee, her absence immediately worried her coworkers. However, Meg had no idea where Dru was and was surprised when Dru did not show up for work as scheduled. Meg contacted mutual friends and then called the local hospital. The hospital told her that Dru had not been admitted. Finding no information, Meg contacted the police around 9 p.m. A police officer was dispatched to the Columbia Mall, where Dru worked, to investigate. Although the mall was closed, the police drove through the parking lot and found Dru's car. The police found the car unlocked, with no signs of a struggle or any evidence of a crime. A black nylon sheath from a folding knife was found on the ground near the car. It is unclear whether this discovery is related to Dru's disappearance, but its presence is alarming. Inside the car, police found paperwork, a wallet, and a new wallet that Dru had purchased that day, suggesting that even if Dru had been in a threatening situation, it did not appear to be a robbery. Her friends, boyfriend, and parents had no idea where Dru might be. So police assumed it was a kidnapping. To begin with, police investigated her boyfriend Chris Lang, but quickly eliminated him as a suspect due to his location 300 miles from Grand Forks, Minnesota. Their conversations with Chris led them to discover that Dru had made 2 phone calls before she disappeared, the first of which was abruptly cut off, while the second call detected some noise. Police later found audio recordings from several hours after Dru's last call, which included wind and the sound of buttons being pressed. The next day, police went to the mall where Dru worked to review the security footage. Upon review, they found that there were no security cameras in the parking lot where Dru's car was parked. Fortunately, however, there were quite a few security cameras inside the mall. Police reviewing the footage found a key moment when Dru entered a local store after hours to purchase a purse. At the time, she appeared calm and unhurried, wearing a pink sweater and holding a jacket. Dru paid for her purchase at 4:55 p.m. and put on her jacket before leaving the store. When she got out, she called Chris, The call was recorded at exactly 5 p.m. Notably, the conversation between Dru and Chris ended abruptly 4 minutes later, at 5:04 p.m., after she said, "Okay, okay." To better understand the events surrounding the call, a police officer decided to conduct an experiment. He set a timer for 4 minutes and walked from the store to the parking lot where Dru's car was parked, simulating her likely route. When the timer went off, the officer was already close to the parking lot where Dru's car was found, suggesting that something may have happened as she approached or reached her car. Unfortunately, the lack of cameras in the parking lot made it difficult for the police to piece together what happened next. Dru's disappearance attracted widespread media attention, and many people decided to take action and volunteer their time to help find her. In addition to the police, more than 1,000 volunteers joined the search for Dru. The FBI also joined the investigation. Tracing Dru's last phone call led police to the small town of Fisher in nearby Minnesota, about a 30-minute drive from where Dru worked. A map of the area between the two towns shows a large area of farmland. To thoroughly search the area, police used a variety of methods and vehicles. These included helicopters, ATVs, horseback riders, and dogs. Local landowners were also asked to check their properties for information. However, these efforts initially yielded no significant leads. As the days passed, police expanded their search. On the fourth day, a breakthrough in the investigation was made when a single shoe was discovered under a bridge in the town of Crookston. A roommate recalled that Dru had been wearing the shoes the day she disappeared. This identification was later confirmed by forensic analysis, verifying that the shoe did indeed belong to Dru. Crookston, a small town of less than 10,000 residents, is about 30 miles from Grand Forks, where Dru went missing. Despite conducting additional searches in the Crookston area, police were unable to find any significant information to assist in the case. An initial reward of $20,000 was offered for information leading to Dru's whereabouts, later increased to $140,000. At this point, the only potential lead was surveillance footage from the Columbia Mall. Police again reviewed hundreds of hours of footage from various cameras, but this time they changed their focus. Instead of just looking for Dru, they speculated that her abductor may have been following her and could also be seen on the videos. Police reviewed the security footage for several hours before finding a suspect that caught their attention. A man wandered around the mall, not shopping and appearing to be more interested in observing the people around him than the merchandise. He eventually sat down on a bench near the mall exit at 3:41 p.m., where he continued to observe people passing by. About 10 minutes later, he put on black gloves and stood up from the bench. He then walked into the lobby, where a camera captured him as he looked up at the camera. This footage was recorded 72 minutes before Dru's conversation with her boyfriend was interrupted. After observing the man stand up from his bench and follow a blonde woman who passed him, who was carrying a grocery cart and heading toward the parking lot. Police did not consider this a coincidence. Instead, in their opinion, the man appeared to have chosen a suitable victim and followed her. The identity of this woman is unknown, but on that day, only Dru disappeared from the mall parking lot. Given the slight resemblance between Dru and the woman, this suspicious man further raised suspicions that he was involved in Dru's disappearance. The investigation into Dru's abduction led police to consider a suspect who was seen stalking a woman at the mall. If for some reason he did not abduct this woman, his next target could be Dru. She left the mall around 5 p.m. after dark. The timing could have worked in his favor. At this point in the investigation, there were 3 cities involved in the case: Grand Forks, where Dru was abducted, Fisher, where her phone was last active, and Crookston, where her shoe was found. With this data, the FBI began checking the records of all registered sex offenders from those cities and the surrounding area, comparing the photos from the records with the suspicious man from the mall. Only one man fit all the parameters, Alfonso Rodriguez, who had a history of repeated crimes against women. The 50-year-old had been in prison for the past 23 years. Alfonso was born the second of 5 children in Laredo, Texas, in February 1953 to immigrant laborers Dolores and Alfonso Rodriguez. His childhood was not a happy one, with his parents constantly criticizing him and having high expectations. His family moved frequently, moving from state to state for 15 years, before finally settling in Crookston in 1963. This constant moving contributed to Alfonso's growing sense of isolation, which was exacerbated by the fact that his primary language was Spanish, while English was primarily spoken at school. As a result, Alfonso struggled academically and eventually dropped out of school in the 9th grade. He then began working as a laborer at the American Sugar Company's refined sugar plant in Crookston. Alfonso claimed that he had been molested by older women as a child, which he believed led to him developing a hostility towards women. In October 1974, when he was 21, Alfonso asked a woman for a ride home but instead took her to a driveway in Crookston, where he attacked her, choked her, and attempted to force her to have sex with him. The following month, Alfonso approached another woman sitting in a van outside a cinema in Crookston, threatened her with a knife, and forced her to a secluded rural location, where he raped her. In 1979, Alfonso attempted to abduct a 69-year-old high school English teacher while she was walking at night in Crookston. When the woman resisted his attempts to force her into his car, Alfonso became enraged and stabbed her in the elbow and abdomen. However, she escaped and ran to safety. The victim drew a composite sketch of Alfonso that closely resembled him, leading to his arrest. He was convicted of attempted kidnapping and aggravated assault and sentenced to 23 years in prison. After serving his full sentence, Alfonso was released from prison in May 2003, just 6 months before Dru went missing. At the time of his release, Alfonso was registered as a level 3 sex offender, indicating a high risk of reoffending. His family expressed concern that he would reoffend after his release, but he was released from prison because he had completed his sentence. After his release, Alfonso moved in with his mother in Crookston, a town near the bridge where Dru's shoe was discovered. This was another piece of evidence that did not favor him. Police questioned Alfonso, who denied any involvement in Dru's disappearance. When asked about his whereabouts on the day of Dru's disappearance, Alfonso claimed that he had gone to a movie theater at the Columbia Mall to see the movie Once Upon a Time in Mexico. However, police later discovered that no movie theater in Grand Forks was showing that movie on the day Dru went missing. Police searched Alfonso's car and found evidence that led them to believe that Dru was unlikely to have survived. The police department began to focus their search efforts instead of their rescue efforts. In Alfonso's car, they found several dark red stains that forensic experts later confirmed were drops of Dru's blood. And blood and dirt were found on the back of the passenger seat. A knife found in the trunk matched the sheath found in the parking lot near Dru's car. Alfonso had purchased the knife from a hardware store near the parking lot where Dru disappeared. Police gathered enough evidence to charge Alfonso 8 days after Dru's disappearance. Alfonso Rodriguez was arrested on December 1, 2003. Despite the evidence, Alfonso maintained his innocence while in custody at the Grand Forks jail and refused to cooperate with the investigation or provide any information about Dru. During a pretrial hearing, Alfonso's bail was set at $5 million. Meanwhile, police continued to search for Dru in the area surrounding the 3 towns, despite difficult conditions due to heavy snowfall. In an unprecedented move, the governors of North Dakota and Minnesota pledged at a press conference on December 9 to assist in the search for Dru, and hundreds of members of the National Guard and other state personnel joined the search. However, despite these joint efforts, no progress was made, and the search was eventually suspended due to worsening weather conditions. In the spring, search efforts for Dru intensified as the winter snow began to melt. After 5 months of searching, Dru's body was finally found on April 17, 2004. The body was found in a field in Crookston, just a few miles from the bridge where the shoe was discovered. Dru's family was devastated by the heartbreaking discovery. The discovery confirmed their worst fears and would have a lasting impact on their lives. Notably, the field where the body was found was searched, but apparently because there was so much snow they were unable to find her body. Dru was found naked from the waist down, suggesting a clear motive for the crime. Her hands were tied behind her back, and a rope was wrapped around her neck with pieces of plastic bags left underneath. This suggested that the bag had originally been placed over Dru's head before being secured with a rope. Alfonso's hair was found on Dru's jacket. She had suffered severe beatings and multiple stab wounds before her death. According to the medical examiner, there were 3 possible causes of her death: neck trauma, asphyxiation, or hypothermia. After months of waiting, Dru's family was finally able to say goodbye to her at a ceremony on April 24, 2004. The event was attended by approximately 1,500 people. Dru was abducted in North Dakota, which abolished the death penalty in 1975. Likewise, Minnesota, where her body was discovered, does not have the death penalty. However, because Dru was transported across state lines, the crime was classified as a federal crime, giving the prosecutor's office the authority to pursue the death penalty against Alfonso. Alfonso Rodriguez, convicted on August 30, 2006, the jury recommended the death penalty, which was formally imposed by Judge Ralph Erickson on February 8, 2007. Alfonso became the first person to be sentenced to death in North Dakota in nearly 100 years. Alfonso spent 6 years on death row, and on June 28, 2013, Alfonso confessed that he was the one who kidnapped and killed Dru. However, the story does not end there. Ralph Erickson, the former district judge who sentenced Alfonso to death, became a judge on the United States Court of Appeals, and it was he who overturned his own conviction of Alfonso in 2021 and ordered a new sentencing phase. Alfonso's guilt was beyond doubt and was confirmed by various DNA tests. However, Judge Ralph Erickson was misled by the defense attorneys about not having Alfonso's mental health examined. Judge Ralph later overturned the death sentence, saying that the police had not examined Alfonso's mental health at the time of the crime, thus violating his constitutional rights. After Alfonso's original death sentence was overturned, the federal prosecutor's office initially announced that they would pursue the death penalty again. However, 2 years later, in 2023, prosecutors reversed their decision, accepting that Alfonso's sentence had been commuted to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In a public statement, United States Attorney Max Schneider announced that the United States government has withdrawn its intention to seek the death penalty against Alfonso Rodriguez. On June 22, 2013, it was reported that Alfonso Rodriguez had been transferred from death row in Terre Haute, Indiana, to the high-security Coleman II prison in Sumterville, Florida. This prison is likely to be his final place of incarceration. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Debbie Lynn Randall. Debbie Randall was born on August 21, 1962, in Marietta, Georgia, to a family with 2 older brothers. Although Debbie's parents divorced when she was young, but her father always gave her love and care. Her mother later married a man named Roy, who became Debbie's stepfather. The family resided in a small apartment building, in a quiet neighborhood nearby a military base. Debbie was a happy and outgoing child who enjoyed socializing with friends, playing basketball, and collecting dolls, which she would often spend hours playing with. On January 13, 1972, 9-year-old Debbie had dinner with her family. Afterward, her mother asked her to go to the nearby laundromat, a task she had done many times before. Debbie's job was to supervise the laundry while it washed. A family member would accompany her to the laundromat to help carry the clothes, but they would return home, leaving Debbie to wait for the wash cycle to finish. The laundromat was just across the street from their home, so her mother is not too worried. It was a common practice at the time for children to help with household chores, like laundry. In fact, Debbie had even made friends with other girls she met at the laundromat. Her mother wants to let Debbie's brother go with her that day, but he wasn't feeling well and preferred to stay home and watch his favorite TV show. Her mom then asked her husband to take the laundry instead, and Debbie accompanied him, bringing a box of detergent along the way. When they arrived, her stepdad unloaded the laundry into 2 washing machines and then left. Debbie stayed behind to wait for the wash cycle to finish. Once it was done, she planned to walk home and ask someone to come back and pick up the clean clothes, as she wasn't strong enough to carry them all by herself. After a while, Debbie's mom realized she hadn't returned home, despite the fact that the laundry had been finished. As the sun started to set, she and her husband decided to look for Debbie. They walked to the laundromat but didn't find her there. A staff member told them that Debbie had left a while ago, and she hadn't returned yet. Getting concerned, Debbie's mom and her husband, Roy, started searching the surrounding streets for her. During their search, they noticed something unusual. A short distance from the laundromat, in the parking lot, detergent had been spilled next to one of the cars. This caught her attention because Debbie had been carrying a box of detergent. Her mom immediately suspected that the spilled detergent might be connected to Debbie's disappearance. They continued to search the parking lot and the surrounding area for Debbie, but no other signs of her were found. Neighbors who were familiar with Debbie's family joined the search, but despite their efforts, no progress was made. Debbie's mother decided to call the police. Officers checked the area in the parking lot where the detergent had been spilled. The police noticed a new lead, near a parked car close to the detergent. Multiple clear fingerprints were visible on the car door, just inches away from the spilled detergent. What caught their attention was that the fingerprints looked fresh, and they were located very low to the door handle, which raised suspicions. The police suspected that an unknown person may have taken Debbie and touched the car in the process, leaving the fingerprints behind. The police collected the fingerprints and handed them over to forensic experts for analysis. At the same time, the police began searching for the car's owner to determine whether the fingerprints belonged to them or an unknown person. The police began searching the streets for additional clues or witnesses. The laundromat employee reported that she had not noticed anything unusual. According to her, Debbie had been waiting for her laundry to finish and then left the building with a box of detergent, likely heading home to ask someone to pick up her clothes. However, it was not long before the police found their first key witness, whose statement would change the direction of the investigation. Sandra, a 12 years old, was walking to the laundromat with her friend to do some laundry. As they approached the laundromat, they witnessed a disturbing scene. A man grabbed a girl from the street and pulled her into his parked car near the laundromat. The girl struggled to free herself and screamed, but the man quickly got into the driver's seat and sped away. In the process, he almost hit Sandra and her friend. One of them shouted after the car as it drove off, but it was too late. At the time, Sandra didn't think much of the incident, assuming the man was the girl's father or a relative picking her up. She didn't report the incident to the police or tell any adults about what she had seen. A crucial witness came forward after learning about Debbie's abduction, providing investigators with vital information. The witness reported that the perpetrator's vehicle was a dark-colored pickup truck, possibly a 1957 model. She described the driver as a young white male with thick, dark hair, wearing a white t-shirt, jeans, and black work boots. Additionally, another girl who lived in the same building as Debbie, shared her own observations from that evening. As she stood outside her apartment, a dark pickup truck drove by, initially her think it was her uncle behind the wheel. However, when the driver stopped in front of her and made eye contact, she realized it was not her uncle. A woman gave investigators a detailed description of a suspect, a white man in his 30s with medium-length dark hair. After gathering more information, they discovered another important witness who lived near the victim's house. The witness nearly collided with a dark pickup truck, possibly a Dodge, which was driving erratically. The driver, around 30 years old with dark hair, was recklessly maneuvering the vehicle. What caught the witness's attention was a girl inside the truck, desperately trying to escape while being restrained by the driver's one hand. The police distributed information about the suspect's vehicle to all patrol units and had police artists create a sketch based on the descriptions provided by the three witnesses. The search was divided into two main directions, with some officers searching for similar vehicles and verifying the owners, while others focused on locating Debbie. Each day, the search operation grew, with more volunteers and police officers from neighboring towns joining in. Approximately 4,000 people participated in the large-scale search operation, a record-setting number for both the city and the state. Meanwhile, detectives investigated Debbie's acquaintances, including her male neighbors, stepfather, and biological father. However, after the investigation, all of them were ruled out as suspects. Debbie's father, who lived in the same city, was informed of his daughter's disappearance and immediately joined the search. Detectives searched for Debbie by checking the backgrounds of previously convicted criminals living nearby, but they didn't find any suspects. Despite 2 weeks of searching, no leads were found. On January 29th, students joined the search and were tasked with searching a wooded area close to Debbie's home. After nearly 5 hours of searching, one of the students found footprints leading off the trail and into the forest, indicating that something had been dragged. Following the tracks 150 feet into the woods, the students stumbled upon a human body. They immediately contacted the officers, and they quickly confirmed that the body was Debbie Randall. She was wearing a lavender dress and a dark blue zip-up jacket with a hood, matching the description provided by her mother on the day she went missing. However, her new lavender shoes, a Christmas gift she had received just weeks earlier and was particularly fond of, were missing. She still had her socks on, but her shoes were nowhere to be found. Debbie's body was examined by medical experts, who concluded that she died from strangulation and had also been assaulted sex. A single dark hair was found on her body, which likely belonged to the killer. However, since DNA analysis was not available at that time, this evidence could not be further analyzed. The experts used a microscope to examine the hair and made a guess, based on their knowledge at the time, that it belonged to a man between 18 and 30 years old. Debbie's clothing was contaminated with dirt, which, in the absence of other leads, detectives decided to scrutinize more closely. They consulted a geologist who worked with the forensic team to analyze the dirt. The results showed that some of the dirt was a specific type of clay, which was from a location less than 10 miles from the city. Further examination confirmed that this clay was the unique Northern Georgia clay. Additionally, distinct dirt stains from another type of clay were discovered, originating from a local mining site just 2 miles from the location of the body. Detectives developed a theory about the incident surrounding Debbie's death. They believed that the perpetrator did not kill she immediately. Instead, they think the perpetrator first drove she to a remote area outside of town where they sexually assaulted her. The perpetrator then drove to another location where they killed Debbie. After her death, the perpetrator transported his body to a forest and leaving it there. This theory is supported by evidences, including clay samples and forensic analysis, which suggest that Debbie was already dead when her body was brought to the forest. The absence of signs of a struggle in the forest area also lends credibility to this theory. The locations of the clay mining sites were remote and difficult to access, suggesting that the killer might have familiarized themselves with the area through work. A mining company supervisor confirmed that the area was hard to navigate even for experienced workers, making the possibility that a stranger could take Debbie there impossible. Police investigated employees from both companies, searching for a man matching the description suspects or someone with a similar car, but this investigation did not produce any leads. They also found fingerprints on the car near the abduction site, which they compared to those of all suspects, but unfortunately, this did not yield any results. The news of Debbie's brutal murder sent shockwaves throughout the city, drawing thousands to her funeral to pay their respects. Despite the local police department's relentless pursuit of justice, the case hit numerous roadblocks, leaving investigators with no new leads for years. The case went cold, but detectives continued to work tirelessly, scrutinizing dozens of suspects yet struggling to establish their involvement. For lead detective Morris Nix, who was just 19 when the case began and has been involved from the start, solving Debbie's murder has become his primary motivation. He pursued multiple leads and suspects over the years, carefully evaluating the evidence and eventually narrowing down the list to 4 men he considered the most likely suspects. The FBI created a DNA database, and experts were able to obtain the perpetrator's genetic profile from a hair found on Debbie's body. The DNA was added to the database, but no matches were found. This suggests that the killer had either never committed a serious crime before or their DNA had not been collected by authorities yet. 43 years after the murder, in 2015, detectives reopened the case and decided to reanalyze Debbie's clothing using advanced technology, as the items had been stored in the evidence warehouse all that time. Experts discovered biological material from a man on the evidence. Debbie's mother spent decades hoping to see her daughter's killer caught and brought to justice. In a 2018 interview, she revealed the pain of living in an apartment where there were many memories of her daughter. Although she eventually moved to a new city, the lack of progress in the case weighed heavily on her for years. When she gets old, her one wish was to see the case resolved before she passed away. Sadly, she passed away from cancer at 78, just weeks after the interview, and her wish was left unfulfilled. She was laid to rest beside her daughter. In 2019, the local police department received extra funding, allowing them to conduct a more detailed analysis of Debbie's clothes. The experts successfully extracted a full DNA sample, but unfortunately, the perpetrator's DNA was not found in the FBI database. Debbie's father was also interviewed, sharing that he thought about Debbie every day over the decades. He held on to a box of her old photos, hoping to reunite with her in heaven. Sadly, he passed away in 2022, just after the interview. In 2022, detectives focused on the case, following their one lead, DNA. They contacted a Florida company that specialized in genetic genealogy, an innovative DNA analysis method. The police provided the company with all the biological samples they had collected over the years. Using these samples, experts created a DNA profile of the suspect and searched for his relatives in genetic databases. To identify the killer, investigators exhaustively examined thousands of using genetic genealogy, then they focused on one family in Marietta. In 2023, the family members willingly provided DNA samples, which helped investigators establish a familial connection to the killer. The results confirmed that the killer was a close relative of this family. After conducting a more thorough investigation, experts were able to identify one person, William Rose, could be the owner of the DNA sample. However, Rose had died in 1974, 2 years after the murder. Undeterred, detectives sought to finally resolve the case and obtained a warrant to exhume William's remains, enabling experts to collect a direct DNA sample. After 51 years, police finally discovered the identity of Debbie's killer. William Rose, who was 24 years old at the time, matched the DNA evidence and was revealed to be the perpetrator. Notably, William had never been a suspect in the investigation. Further research showed that his relatives lived in the same building as Debbie's family, and he often visited them. Investigators believe this frequent contact likely gave him multiple opportunities to see Debbie. On the evening of the murder, it's possible that William was heading to visit his relatives, and he encountered Debbie leaving the laundromat. According to witness testimonies, William pulled his vehicle into the parking lot between Debbie's house and the laundromat. He left the engine running, exited his vehicle, grabbed Debbie, and drove north. The direction of his escape led police to suspect that he may have immediately driven to a nearby clay quarry. Notably, William had no other serious criminal offenses on record. It is unclear whether he committed other crimes that went undetected or if Debbie's murder was an isolated incident. By the time the case was solved, the only living close relative of Debbie was her older brother, Melvin. He attended a press conference where the identification of the culprit was announced and expressed gratitude to everyone involved in solving his younger sister's case after more than 50 years. Melvin also shared that he wished his mother had lived to see this moment, but he took comfort in believing that she was now reunited with Debbie in heaven. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Natalie Connolly. Natalie Connolly is a charming and beautiful girl. She has a twin sister. The twins not only look alike, they are also very close. Natalie has a cheerful and sociable personality. She always brings joy to those around her and easily makes people laugh. As a single mother, Natalie has faced many challenges, but she has tried to give her daughter Madison everything she needs. She gives her love and care to her daughter. One day, in a crowded bar, Natalie meets John Broadhurst, a charming and sophisticated man who immediately catches her attention. Despite the age difference, John's charm and wit quickly capture Natalie's heart. Soon, they exchange contact information, eager to delve deeper into their budding relationship. As they spend more time together, Natalie finds herself irresistibly attracted to John from the moment they meet, even though she initially has no idea what he does for a living or how wealthy he is. As they became closer, John revealed that he was a millionaire, a fact that became apparent through his lavish displays of affection. He showered Natalie with expensive gifts and took her to lavish dinners at high-end restaurants. His large mansion looked like a fairy tale castle, and Natalie was charmed by his gentle and polite manner. However, beneath John's charming exterior, he hides many secrets. Over time, it becomes clear that his life is more complicated than he initially lets on. Between John's engagement to his pregnant fiancée and his expectation of their second child, John has been hiding the existence of 3 more children. His relationship with Natalie is revealed to be an affair. Continues even as he deals with the breakup of his previous relationship, eventually choosing to turn his attention to Natalie. At first, John and Natalie's romance seems like a fairy tale. John quickly becomes acquainted with her daughter Madison, and she easily wins the hearts of his children. John showers Natalie with lavish gifts and seems to make every dream imaginable come true. However, when Natalie moves into John's estate in Kinver, Staffordshire, England, their passionate relationship begins to fall apart as they begin to live together and share every moment of their lives. John enjoys rough and aggressive intimacy, similar to scenes in 50 Shades of Grey, which makes Natalie feel uncomfortable. He took pleasure in inflicting pain during intimate moments, often leaving visible evidence of his aggression in the form of bruises and cuts. Despite the initial romance and luxury of the relationship, Natalie began to see a darker reality in their relationship. She felt trapped and reluctant to comply with John's demands. Fearing abandonment, like his pregnant ex-fiancée, and fearing a return to her previous lonely life, she chose to stay and not leave. Natalie turns to her sister and mother for support, sharing with them the physical and emotional pain she suffered at the hands of John during their intense and often violent sexual encounters. Although John is adept at being a lover, Natalie cannot ignore the pain he frequently causes her. She struggles to reconcile her conflicting emotions, feeling caught between the pleasure she experiences with him and the hurt he causes her. The chaos leaves Natalie feeling stuck, unsure how to reconcile. As Natalie's dissatisfaction grew, she and John began to drift apart, both seeking new relationships outside of their marriage. John sought relationships with other women and Natalie texted other men. When John discovers Natalie chatting with other men, he becomes extremely angry. Although he himself had relationships with other women, he still felt uncomfortable with Natalie having relationships with other men. However, he hid his discomfort and instead suggested Natalie go out and eat together. On December 18, 2016, after a fun day of going out and having dinner at a favorite restaurant, John asked the driver to take them home. But behind the normal appearance, John had dark intentions. Natalie had drunk a lot of alcohol during dinner that night. When she returned home, she was disoriented, staggered out of the car, and unfortunately left her phone behind. When she entered the house, John had darker plans. After the driver returned and handed Natalie the phone, she endured John's brutal attacks. He violently attacked her, punching, kicking, stomping, and throwing bleach at her face and genitals. To add to her pain, he used a bottle of carpet cleaner as a weapon, spraying it on her from a hose. After completing his vicious attack, John heartlessly left Natalie at the bottom of the stairs, badly injured and bleeding profusely. She lay in a pool of blood as John retreated to his bed. When he awoke several hours later, he found Natalie dead, having suffered numerous horrific injuries. John's subsequent actions, including his unconvincing performance during the emergency call, expose his twisted mentality as he nonchalantly announces Natalie's situation to the rescue team. As the paramedics sadly carried Natalie's body into the ambulance, John stood there, emotionless, silently observing the tragic consequences of his actions. After Natalie was declared dead, he was arrested by the police. In an attempt to explain what had happened, John claimed that things had gone too far during rough sex. He insisted that Natalie had consented to everything they did, and that she had even requested the violent and brutal acts that led to her death. According to John's disturbing account, Natalie had wanted to be hurt, abused, and had a foreign object inserted into her body. He claimed that despite the blood and pain, she had told him that she was fine and wanted more, and that he was trying to blame her for her tragic death. John attempted to avoid responsibility by claiming that Natalie had willingly engaged in rough sex many times before without any problems. When asked why he had left her lying at the bottom of the stairs partially clothed, he gave an excuse, that the house was always warm. So he did not need to provide a blanket. John showed no remorse or apology, instead placing the blame squarely on Natalie. Surprisingly, his attempt at blame-shifting worked, much to the anger of many. Although he was convicted of manslaughter, he was given a relatively short sentence of 3 years and 8 months, and serving only 22 months before being released. Today, John Broadhurst walks among us, a stark reminder of the miscarriages of justice and the ongoing pain suffered by Natalie and her loved ones. The Natalie Connolly case has been widely criticized and controversial. Motivated Fiona McKenzie to launch the "We Can't Agree with This" movement in December 2018. McKenzie's initiative serves two purposes: to spark conversations about the widespread problem of sexual assault and to advocate for the removal of the rough sex defense. In Fiona's view, she believes that this defense justifies violence in intimate relationships and reinforces harmful stereotypes. However, McKenzie was surprised to discover that some individuals, despite disagreeing with the court's decision, accepted it. They believed that it was just an accident, not a sign of intentional homicide. Unfortunately, This way of thinking often leads to victim blaming, unfairly holding them responsible for the risks of their actions. The gross sexual homicide defense was explicitly banned with the passing of the Domestic Abuse Bill by Parliament on July 6, 2020. Following royal assent on April 29, 2021, the bill banned the gross sexual homicide defense, a significant step in tackling domestic violence. Offenders can no longer use this defense to justify their actions. Natalie's death has left a huge void in the lives of her family and friends, who are in shock and deeply saddened by her loss. Since her death, the community has come together to raise awareness of domestic violence and to help survivors heal and recover. Their kindness and solidarity has brought hope in the wake of a terrible tragedy. Although Natalie's life has ended, her memory will always remain with those who knew and loved her. Her story will inspire us to fight against domestic violence and help those in need. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Jared Bridegon. Jared Bridegon was born in 1989 in Florida to a modest family. He was the second of two sons, and he was very close to his older brother, Adam. His family was heavily involved with the Church of Jesus Christ of Saints. As Jared entered his teenage years, he met a girl named Mallory Bowden through the church. The two began a date relationship, with she considering Jared her first true love. However, their religious community discouraged living together before marriage, which caused Jared and Mallory to eventually separate. This occurred after Jared graduated from a high school in Florida in 2007. Then, he decided to pursue further education in another state. Jared moved to Utah for college, where he would meet his future first wife at a friend's birthday party. In 2009, Jared, then 20 years old, met Shauna Gardner, 22 years old, from a wealthy family. Shauna was a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. She was born in 1987 to parents Sterling and Shelley Gardner, who co-founded Stampin' Up!, a major company that produces and sells craft items. By 2010, the family business, based in Salt Lake City, generated an annual revenue of $100 million. She has a sister named Sarah, who holds a managerial position in the family business. Growing up in a wealthy family, Shauna enjoyed luxury and a life of leisure. She didn't work as a chef, despite being trained in that profession. People described her as enthusiastic but also a bit indecisive. Initially, Jared wasn't overly interested in her. However, Shauna made an effort to draw him in with her lavish lifestyle, suggesting they could travel the world and do as they pleased, thanks to her parents' financial support. The couple's relationship moved quickly. Just a few months after meeting, they got engaged. By early 2010, they had married in a lavish temple ceremony in Salt Lake City, Utah, the Shauna family covering all expenses. Their decision to marry quickly was influenced by their strong religious beliefs. After getting married, Shauna and Jared moved to Utah, where they bought a comfortable home, valued at around $1 million, with the help of the bride's parents. Each of them owned a Mercedes, despite Jared still being in school and Shauna not having a job. They took many luxurious trips around the world and often posted about their adventures, expensive buys, and hobbies on social media. Friends close to they said that Shauna's parents gave them about $10,000 each month for expenses and also let them use their accounts freely. Jared received a generous gift of $100,000 from his in-laws after completing his degree, which he used to start his own business. The following year, 2013, they welcomed a set of twins, a daughter named Abigail and a son named Liam. Initially, the family resided in Connecticut, but they soon relocated after Liam was diagnosed with a heart condition and lung issues. The move was recommended by doctors, who advised that a coastal location would be beneficial for Liam's health. The Jared family consequently settled in Florida, purchasing a comfortable two-story home near the coastline in Ponte Vedra Beach, south of Jacksonville. During this time, Shauna managed her social media blog, where she presented herself as a loving wife and caring mother. Jared and Shauna were a couple who took fitness seriously, often visiting the gym together. Noticing his wife's dedication, Jared decided to surprise her by hiring a personal trainer. However, soon after they relocated, the couple faced significant marital issues. Even so, they still choose to save face and pretend that everything is fine. Shauna's feelings about their religion began to shift. She lost interest and nearly stopped attending church services, while Jared still stands his ground. This difference in faith and devotion caused ongoing tension and arguments. Furthermore, Shauna's perception of Jared had also changed. She felt he had become lazy, gained weight, and lacked focus on starting his business. Jared completed online courses in programming and design. He then got a job at Microsoft, which helped him gain financial independence. Over time, he advanced to a senior manager position. However, his relationship with his wife began to deteriorate, and frequent arguments became a common occurrence in their home. The situation worsened when Jared discovered intimate conversations between his wife and her fitness trainer, causing him to suspect they were having an affair with each other. Although his wife denied this, the coach confirmed Jared's suspicions via phone call. Jared then contacted his friend, Meller Bowden, via email, lamenting that his wife had become distant from him and increasingly attached to her fitness trainer. Despite this, he expressed his desire to forgive her and work through their issues for the sake of their children. Unfortunately, their efforts to repair the relationship were unsuccessful. In 2015, after nearly 6 years of marriage, the couple began a contentious divorce, battling over shared assets and child custody. Jared publicly accused Shauna of being unfaithful, which she vehemently denied, claiming instead that the marriage had lost its love. In turn, she accused Jared of being cruel and behaving offensively. A dispute between Shauna and Jared led to disagreements over the division of assets and custody of their twin children. Shauna claimed that most of their possessions, including their home, cars, and bank account funds, were gifts or purchased by her parents. She believed Jared had no claim to these items because he had only recently started working after spending years on his education. Jared countered that he was entitled to at least half of their Florida home, citing his contributions over the years. Shauna and Jared also had intense disputes about the custody of their twins. Shauna accused Jared of manipulating the children against her when he was with them, coaching them on what to say about she and recording their statements to use as evidence in court. In response, Jared accused she of snooping on his private life by installing hidden cameras in their home, tapping his phone calls, and tracking his movements. Shauna sought sole custody of the children and sole ownership of their seaside home. She also accused Jared of attempting to withdraw from the children's trust funds for his own use. He retaliated by accusing of tax evasion and claiming that she received thousands of dollars in income working at the family company without paying taxes. By the end of 2015, the court had awarded Jared and Shauna joint custody of their children, but this decision did not bring an end to their disputes. Despite their divorce being finalized, they continued to engage in lengthy court battles for nearly 7 more years, leading to a tragic outcome. During this time, both Jared and Shauna had new families and having more children. Jared met Christina, a fellow Microsoft employee from North Carolina, in 2016. At first, they were just friends, but eventually developed into a dating relationship. A few months later, Christina relocated to Florida to be with Jared. In the fall of 2017, Jared and Christina got married. In February 2019, they had a daughter named Bexley. They then had a son named London in August 2021. Around the same time, Shauna also married again in 2018 to a man named Mario Fernandez who owned a real estate business. Mario was a year her junior. In 2018, Shauna and Mario had a son named Michael. They later moved into the house where Shauna used to live with her ex-husband, Jared. Jared and Shauna's ongoing conflict continued despite both having started new families. They still filed lawsuits against each other, making new demands. One major point of contention was Jared's insistence that if Shauna was not present, her new husband Mario should not be allowed to be with their twins, Abigail and Liam. Simultaneously, he also seeking greater involvement for his new wife Christina in raising Abigail and Liam. On the other hand, Shauna alleged that Jared was trying to humiliate her by not allowing her to use the larger, safer family vehicle to transport the children. Their last court meeting, which took place 4 months before Jared's death, was exceptionally tense. Both parties leveled new accusations, and their property rights continued to be a point of dispute. Following their divorce, a court ruling granted Shauna exclusive use of the larger vehicle and required Jared to pay her $600 in compensation. Jared would pick up Abigail and Liam every Wednesday to spend time together. They would meet for dinner, with their younger sister Bexley occasionally joining them. On Wednesday, February 22, 2022, Jared followed their routine. He picked up Abigail and Liam, took them to a coastal cafe for dinner, and then they went for a walk. After that, he took his 2 children to Shauna's house and headed home via his usual route, which took about 40 minutes. Part of this route included a deserted and poorly lit stretch of road. As Jared drove slowly in the dark, aware that his 3-year-old daughter, Bexley, was asleep in her car seat, he suddenly spotted a tire in his lane. It was around 9 p.m. Jared stopped the car, turned on his hazard lights, and got out to move the tire to the side of the road. Then several shots rang out. Jared didn't have time to react, because the shooter acted with precision, firing multiple bullets at close range, and later fleeing the scene. Bexley was not injured or harmed in this incident. A passerby witnessed the aftermath of the shooting and cautiously approached Jared's body, which was lying in a pool of blood. The passerby immediately called for police and paramedics, but unfortunately, they arrived too late to save Jared. The investigation began with a suspicious timeline. Just before the incident, Jared had called his wife, Christina, to let her know he was on his way home. However, when Jared didn't arrive after an hour, Christina tried calling him again, this time reaching a police officer who informed her of the incident and asked her to report to the Jacksonville Beach Police Station. The police investigation at the scene revealed that Jared's car had stopped due to a tire on the road. They concluded that Jared had exited his vehicle to remove the obstacle, at which point he was shot. Fortunately, Bexley, who was asleep in the back seat, was unharmed, suggesting that she was not the target of the shooter. The fact that Jared's wallet, phone, and tablet were still in the vehicle, with no valuables missing, led investigators to quickly rule out robbery as a motive. Christina was asked if her husband had any known enemies or recent conflicts. She said she didn't know of anyone who wanted to harm him, except possibly his first wife, Shauna. However, she didn't want to make any direct accusations without solid proof. The police couldn't find any surveillance footage of the incident because there were no cameras in the area where it happened. A witness did hear the shots. Then they did hear a vehicle speeding away, and they couldn't see anything in the dark. Christina suggested that Shauna was involved in the crime, a theory that seemed possible to investigators. However, investigators suspect Shauna had an accomplice, as she had an alibi at the time of the crime. She was at home with Mario, Abigail, and Liam, Michael, and visiting parents at the time of the incident. To gather more evidence, the police reviewed nearby surveillance footage. To further investigate, detectives checked the footage from nearby surveillance cameras. The footage showed a dark blue Ford F-150 with brown trim entering the area about 15 minutes before the incident occurred. The same vehicle was seen again on camera a few minutes after the witness reported hearing shots. Jared's family made public appeals asking anyone with information, no matter how small, about the case to come forward. The police arrested Shayanna and her current husband, Mario, as their first suspects. Despite multiple questioning sessions, they both denied any involvement in the murder. Shayanna acknowledged that her relationship with Jared was complicated, but insisted she would never harm him. In an emotional interview, Shayanna shared how Abigail and Liam reacted to the news of Jared's death. Abigail cried uncontrollably for hours, while Liam was in shock and remained silent for a long time. A notable absence at Jared's funeral was that of his ex-wife Shayanna and older children, Abigail and Liam. When Christina told Shayanna that didn't want her at the ceremony, Shayanna responded that if she couldn't attend, neither would their children. Almost a year after the murder, in January 2023, the first suspect was finally arrested. Before that, the police have remained silent on the progress of the investigation, only admitting that a lot of time and resources are needed. A new clue has been found when a dark blue Ford F-150, possibly related to the case, caused an accident and then fled in a crowded area. Fortunately, numerous cameras in the vicinity captured footage, allowing authorities to quickly identify the suspect. The vehicle was owned by 62-year-old Henry Tenen, an unemployed man with a history of convictions. Henry was subsequently charged with multiple offenses, including second-degree premeditated murder using a firearm, participating in a conspiracy to commit murder, and setting up an ambush to obstruct the victim. Jacksonville Beach Police Chief Jonathan Paul Smith and City Prosecutor Melissa Nelson held a press conference to announce the charges against Henry. During the conference, it was revealed that Henry was not the only one involved. In exchange for a lighter sentence, he had agreed to testify against his accomplices. However, their names were not disclosed to protect the integrity of the ongoing investigation. As the investigation continued, it was discovered that Henry with his friend had been living in a rental house owned by Mario. The police questioned Henry's housemate, but he did not have any valuable information about the case. Although he lived with Henry, the housemate had no personal relationship with the owner, Mario, only paying rent through a middleman, Henry. A thorough search of the house led to a significant discovery: a hidden pistol in Henry's room. Ballistic tests later confirmed that this pistol was the murder weapon, further implicating Henry in the crime. Mario Fernandez was arrested on March 16, 2023, after his accomplice, Henry, pleaded guilty and agreed to testify against him. Mario was charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy, and incitement to commit a serious crime. Rumors soon emerged that Shayanna was the mastermind behind the murder. These allegations were supported by two key witnesses: her former lover, a fitness trainer, and a tattoo artist she regularly visited. The fitness trainer revealed that Shayanna said that she really hates her ex-husband, Jared, and had wished for his death. The tattoo artist shared a similar account, stating that Shayanna had complained about the ongoing legal battles with Jared and had inquired about potential ways to silence him permanently. Shayanna initially made the inquiry in a joking manner, but she repeated it months later, showing her serious intent. Despite denying all allegations and initially stating her to cooperate with the investigation, but Shayanna moved to Washington with her children a few months after Mario's arrest. On August 17, 2023, Shayanna was arrested in her Washington apartment and was charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy, and incitement to commit a serious crime. She was extradited to Florida to stand trial alongside Mario and the other suspects. It is believed that Shayanna's motive stemmed from her complicated relationship with Jared, as well as the desire to avoid sharing custody of their two children and the desire to have complete control over shared assets. The case is ongoing and charges are being pursued against everyone involved. Henry, an individual associated with the case, has pleaded guilty and is cooperating with the investigation in hopes of receiving a lighter sentence. Even so, He faces a minimum sentence of 15 years in prison, which would be life-altering given his advanced age. Mario Fernandez, Shauna's husband and a co-conspirator, has partially admitted his guilt, but refusing to testify against his wife. In contrast, Shauna denies all charges. However, prosecutors are asking for the death penalty or life imprisonment without parole for both Shauna Gardner and Mario Fernandez Saldana. Meanwhile, their 3 children are in the care of their maternal grandparents, Starling and Shelley Gardner, and their aunt, Sarah. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Becky Bliefnick. Becky and Tim met while studying at Quincy University. Becky majored in biology and loved tennis. Tim was an excellent football player, popular in school. Those close to Tim commented that he was a cheerful, innocent, and friendly guy. Tim always greeted everyone with a warm hug. With an enthusiastic and friendly personality, Tim was very loved by his friends. On the other hand, Becky's friends described her as a cheerful person, capable of making the surrounding atmosphere bright and positive just by her presence. With her positive energy and bright smile, Becky easily made a good impression on everyone around her. Both Becky and Tim were attractive people, and they seemed to complement each other perfectly. The combination of attractive appearance and compatible personalities made them an ideal couple in the eyes of everyone. 2 years after graduating from Quincy University, Becky and Tim decided to get married and start a new phase in their lives. Being a practical couple, they prioritized saving money over spending. Instead of buying an engagement ring and planning a lavish honeymoon, they decided to use their savings to put a down payment on their first home. Becky had dreamed of becoming a doctor, but ultimately did not pursue this career. Although she loved medicine, Becky felt a stronger calling to motherhood. She longed to experience the joy and happiness of motherhood. This dream came true when she and her husband Tim had 3 sons. Becky loved spending quality time with her children and watching them grow up. As her children grew older, Becky decided to pursue her own dreams. She chose to go back to school to get her nursing degree. On the other hand, Tim has always been a performer, from his time in community theater in Quincy to creating comedic videos on social media. He has the ability to captivate audiences with his humor and charisma. In 2008, Tim decided to challenge himself by entering the competition American Gladiators. Although he did not make it to the final round, he tried his best and made it to the final audition round of the show. In September 2019, Tim took a new opportunity to attract attention and showcase his talent. The production team of the popular TV show Family Feud invited Tim and his family to participate. However, Becky could not join him because she was attending nursing school. Determined to make the most of the opportunity to participate in the show, Tim gathered his family, including his parents and brothers. Family Feud is a television game show where 2 families compete against each other by guessing the most popular answer from a survey of 100 people. Steve Harvey, the famous host of Family Feud, asked Tim, "What do you think is the most popular answer to the question, 'What's the biggest mistake you made at your wedding?'" Tim, known for his sense of humor, surprised Steve Harvey in the audience with his clever answer. He said, "Honey, I love you, but said I do." This statement was shocking and made the whole studio laugh. Although this answer was not expected, it still won second place on the leaderboard, earning Tim and his family many points. The Bliefnick family competed on Family Feud for 3 episodes, winning a total of $20,000. The prize money was divided equally among the family members. There was one notable exception, however. Tim did not share his reward with his wife, Becky. After many years of marriage, Becky and Tim's relationship began to strain. When Becky decided to become a nurse, Tim strongly objected. He said he was worried about Becky's health because nursing was often a high-stress job. Tim also noticed that Becky often had difficulty controlling her patience and stress when caring for the children. This made him worry about her ability to handle the job of a nurse. However, Becky's friends had a different view of Tim's reaction. They believed that Tim did not want Becky to be independent and free to pursue her own interests. Over time, they noticed that Becky was no longer as happy in the marriage as she had been before. Things were going well for the first 5 years, but then Tim began to act more controlling and manipulative towards Becky. Becky's friends noticed that while Becky was putting a lot of effort into her studies and nursing work, Tim was not contributing his fair share to the household chores. Tim did not participate in cleaning and taking care of their son. Instead, he left Becky to shoulder all the household chores after her long, tiring shifts at the hospital. Becky noticed that their marriage was struggling and wanted to work on this with Tim. She suggested that the two of them go to marriage counseling, hoping that this would help them improve the situation and mend their relationship. However, Tim refused this proposal, leaving Becky feeling disappointed. Although Becky tried her best to save their marriage, Tim had other intentions. In January 2012, after 11 years of marriage, Tim suddenly filed for divorce from Becky. This decision shocked Becky, as she had shown determination and effort to maintain the relationship. However, Tim's intentions were clear. He moved out of the house and into a new place on the other side of town. Tim explained that the main reason for his decision to divorce was due to the change in Becky's personality after she became a nurse. He found that her new career had significantly affected her behavior, causing a negative impact on their marriage. The divorce process was stressful. Tim and Becky could not find common ground and their relationship more deteriorated. During the divorce proceedings, Tim and Becky fought over a number of issues, including child custody, property division, and alimony. The situation became so tense that Tim filed for a protective order against Becky. He accused her of stalking and harassing him. Tim cited one specific incident. During a parent-teacher, Becky became aggressive and argued with him. As evidence, Tim provided a cell phone video of Becky banging on his car door outside the school after the conference. Becky, however, had a different view of the situation. She believed that Tim was the one who was harassing her. Becky texted her friends to share her concerns. In the messages, she described multiple instances of Tim's violent behavior, including yelling at her, pushing her in front of the children, and throwing things around the house. Becky sent a text message to a friend, expressing her deep concern about Tim's mental health. She noticed that Tim was becoming more hostile and unpredictable. Recently, a co-worker of Becky's was murdered by her partner, which made her even more fearful for her safety. Becky began to suspect that Tim might harm her, similar to what had happened to her co-worker. As a result, Becky sent a text message to her sister, saying that if anything happened to her, Tim would be the one to pay the most attention. Becky was worried that Tim would use force to gain custody of their child. This message made Becky's sister very worried about her sister's safety. She understood that Becky's fears were justified and that Becky needed immediate help. Out of concern for Becky's safety, her sister convinced her to seek help from the Domestic Violence Support Center. After some consideration, Becky decided to file for a protective order against Tim. After reviewing both Tim and Becky's requests for protective orders, the judge decided not to grant either of them. Instead, the judge ordered them to stay away from each other's homes, except to exchange custody of their children. On February 22, Becky and Tim's 3 sons, ages 12, 10, and 5, stayed overnight at Tim's house. Tim's house is about a mile from where Becky lives. The divorce proceedings between Becky and Tim are expected to be finalized within the next week. The next day, Tim called Becky's father. He explained that he had been unable to reach Becky and that she had not picked up her sons from school as usual. Becky's father, knowing that his daughter was devoted to her children, realized that something serious must have happened that had left Becky unable to perform her duties as a mother. Concerned about Becky's health, her father drove to her house immediately. When he arrived, he entered the house and walked through the rooms, calling Becky's name. Receiving no response, he went upstairs and entered his daughter's bedroom. Inside, he witnessed a horrifying scene: Becky lying motionless in a pool of blood, her body covered in gunshot wounds. Investigators arrived at Becky's house after her father discovered her body in the bathroom. Becky's body was lying on her back, covered in blood and showing no signs of life. Investigators began their investigation by thoroughly inspecting the exterior of the home. After a thorough search, they determined that the suspect had entered the home by forcing open an upstairs window in a child's bedroom. This discovery revealed that the suspect had used a porch chair to gain easy access to the home and onto the roof. Investigators followed the trail they believed the suspect had taken. They headed toward Becky's bedroom, where the door appeared to have been kicked in or forcefully broken. The damage to the bedroom door indicated that the suspect had entered the room, most likely to look for Becky. Evidence indicated that Becky attempted to hide in the bathroom, but the suspect followed and caught up with her. The suspect eventually shot Becky in the bathroom. While examining the crime scene around the bathroom where Becky's body was found, investigators stumbled upon her cell phone. When investigators examined Becky's phone, they found a call to 91126 at 1:11 a.m. This discovery helped them develop a theory about what happened that night. They believe that while being chased by the suspect in her home, Becky tried to call 911 for help, but in a panic, she mistakenly dialed 91126. Before Becky could call 911 again, investigators believe that the suspect grabbed the phone from her. The mistaken call occurred at 1:11 a.m., so they think Becky may have been murdered around that time. However, when police investigated Becky's neighborhood, no one remembered hearing any strange noises at that time. This raised suspicions for investigators. Since Becky had multiple gunshot wounds, it was unlikely that no one heard anything. When investigators thoroughly searched Becky's home, they quickly determined that the murder was not a burglary, as nothing was missing. However, the perpetrator left behind a number of important pieces of evidence. Most notably, a partial shoe print was found near the entrance. This shoe print could help identify the make and model of the suspect's shoes, as well as provide information about the size and shape of their feet. At the scene, investigators found 8 9mm bullet casings and several small pieces of plastic scattered on the floor near Becky's body. Despite the extensive evidence collected, investigators were still unable to come to a definitive conclusion. Therefore, they decided to send the collected evidence to a forensic lab for further analysis. Detectives are investigating whether any of Becky's neighbors had installed security cameras outside their homes. They discovered that a neighbor had installed a camera on the side of their house after their car was broken into a year ago. The camera was facing the neighbor's driveway, which bordered Becky's house. It was set up to detect motion and send an alert to the homeowner. However, on the night of Becky's death, the camera did not capture any important footage. As they investigated further, investigators discovered that on the day of the murder, a man was seen walking down the back path of Becky's house at 1:05 a.m. on the security camera footage. About 48 minutes later, the man was seen walking back in the opposite direction. Becky's neighbor's security camera also recorded a similar incident about a week earlier. On February 14th, footage from the neighbor's security camera showed Becky seeing a dark figure lurking around her house. After discovering this, Becky's neighbor immediately informed her of the news. After the neighbor reported the mysterious stranger, Becky began to feel anxious. Although she had not seen anyone on her house, she had heard noises in her backyard the night before, which frightened her. Police reviewed security camera footage from Becky's neighbors and continued to search the neighborhood for additional footage. They found video from a home near the Quiney bus stop that showed a bicyclist wearing dark clothing moving toward Becky's home. The videos showed a bicyclist wearing dark clothing, matching the description of the mystery person in the footage of Becky's driveway. After analyzing the time of the footage, detectives suspected that the bicyclist was the person in the footage. Although Becky's neighbor's security cameras did not capture the mystery person on the night of her murder, police did stumble upon footage of a bicyclist heading toward Becky's home shortly before and after the incident. The video footage showed a person matching the description of the person lurking in Becky's driveway before she was murdered. While the video was helpful to the investigation, the poor quality of the footage made it difficult to gather details. Detectives were unable to determine the gender or identity of the person in the video due to the graininess of the image. However, they did notice one important detail: the bicycle the person was riding appeared to have no reflectors on its wheels. When Becky was murdered, her sister immediately thought of Tim, Becky's soon-to-be ex-husband, as a possible suspect. She had witnessed their tense divorce and shared this thought with the detectives investigating the case. Based on this information, the police began to consider Tim as the prime suspect. Notably, the murder occurred just a week before Becky and Tim finalized their divorce, making the situation particularly suspicious. During the investigation of Becky's murder, investigators made an important discovery. They found a bicycle without reflectors on its wheels, similar to the one seen on the security camera, just a block away from Tim's house. This discovery raised suspicions about Tim, prompting detectives to seek a search warrant for his home. When police executed the search warrant, Tim was cooperative and respectful. He willingly stood outside the home with the officers while investigators searched his property. On March 13, 2023, Tim was arrested and charged with Becky's murder 2 weeks earlier. When Tim's mugshot was released, Becky's family and friends were shocked by his appearance. Instead of the well-groomed man they knew, they saw a completely different Tim, unkempt and seemingly frail. Many believe that this change reflected the negative impact that the divorce had had on Tim. His unkempt hair and shabby clothes were a clear sign of the deterioration in his previously well-groomed appearance. The divorce was blamed for Tim's declining physical and mental health, according to friends and family. However, Tim explained that he had grown his hair long to take part in a charity campaign to raise awareness for cancer research. A clip from the Family Feud show in which Tim said he wished he had not married his wife when he was arrested for murdering her caused a stir. Many people saw this reaction as an uncanny sign of Tim's true feelings for his wife. Some even suggested it was a warning sign of potential problems in their relationship. Investigators carefully examined Tim's phone and discovered that he had created a fake Facebook account under the name John Smith. During the investigation, they discovered that Tim had been looking to buy a bicycle on Facebook. He was particularly interested in a blue Schwinn without reflectors on the wheels. This was notable because it matched the description of the bike found abandoned near Tim's home, just a block away. Despite the overwhelming evidence against Tim, convicting him was difficult. Tim was held without bail and ordered a speedy trial, requiring the prosecution to bring the case to trial within 90 days of his arrest. However, the prosecution faced a major challenge in convincing a jury of Tim's guilt, due to the lack of two key elements that are often considered decisive in criminal cases: a confession and DNA evidence. Without these two elements, proving Tim's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt became very difficult. In prosecuting Tim for his wife's murder, the prosecution faced a major challenge. 3 months after Becky was murdered in their home, Tim appeared in court on May 23, 2023. During the trial, the state presented evidence that investigators had collected at the scene. A key piece of evidence was the plastic debris found around Becky's body. The prosecution claimed that it was from an Aldi grocery bag. They also told the jury that several similar bags were found during a subsequent search of Tim's home. The prosecution alleged that Tim used the Aldi plastic bag as a silencer when he shot his ex-wife multiple times in order to muffle the sound of the gunfire and avoid detection. They claimed that Tim left DNA on the bags. An expert who testified said it was highly likely that the DNA found on the bags belonged to Tim. Prosecutors presented evidence to the jury about a crowbar found in Tim's basement that they believed could have been used to pry open a window at the victim's home on the night of her murder. However, an expert testified that although there were some slight similarities between the marks on the window and the crowbar, she could not say for certain that the crowbar was used in the crime. The prosecution presented several new pieces of evidence to bolster its case. They presented searches that Tim had conducted on his phone, including how to open a door with a crowbar, how to make a silencer for a homemade pistol, how to clean gunpowder off his hands, and the average response time for Quincy police. An expert was called to testify that she had compared the shell casings found at the crime scene to the shell casings found in Tim's home. She determined that 27 of the shell casings from Tim's home were fired from the same 9mm weapon used in the murder. When investigators searched Tim's home, they did not find Becky's 9mm gun. Tim claimed that he had not seen the gun for months before Becky was killed. During the trial, the defense did not call any witnesses. After a 6-day trial, the jury deliberated for 4 hours before finding Tim guilty. Ultimately, Tim was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Although Tim maintained his innocence and planned to appeal, Becky's family believed the sentence was deserved. Becky's sister spoke to Tim about the consequences of his actions on his sons, emphasizing that his choices had caused them pain. Even though Becky is gone, her sister promises to keep her memory alive in the hearts of her 3 sons.